everybody. We're gonna do our stretches today, just like every morning. And make sure that you have plenty of room, that you're not near a brother or sister or couch or coffee table, because we're gonna do some big movements today to get our bodies stretched out, okay? We're gonna start with some arm circles, big arm circles. We're gonna come forward. And then when you get tired of doing arm circles forward, you can switch and go backward. Nice big arm circles. You should feel this in your shoulders, in your back muscles. Very good. Move your arms out. Now we're going to do some big kicks. So again, make sure you're not kicking anybody. We're going to alternate right, left, and we're going to kick across the body. So our legs will kind of go at an angle across our body. Okay, so start with your right leg and kick across, left, across. See how I'm crossing over in front of my body as opposed to kicking straight out? I'm kicking over to the side. Okay, good. Keep doing your kicks, side to side, across your body. Very good. Now, with our feet apart, let's go do some lunges, side to side. Now, leaving your feet apart, stretch your arms up, up to the sky, a little bit more, up. Okay. Now, a deep bend all the way down as far as you can go. Touch the floor if you can, and feel that stretch on the back of your legs and the back of your neck, all the way along your spine. And roll up slowly so that you don't get dizzy. Very good. Now we're going to try to touch your right ear to your right shoulder, just as far as you can go where it doesn't hurt. We're just stretching out our necks a little bit. And left ear to left shoulder. Very good. Now I'll show you our diffuser today. We have green because I know that Judah and some of you other guys, you like the green, so we did green today. We'll change the color later. We'll come over here and do our calendar time because there's something kind of special about today. Put you right here so you can see. So today is our last day of March. Today is Tuesday, March 31st. To find the 31 has 3 tens, 1 unit. Put it right here on the calendar. So this is the last day of March. When you watch your videos tomorrow and we do stretches and calendar time, all of these days will be taken off and we will switch March to what? Do you know what month comes next? January, February, March, April. So April will be our next month. So tomorrow, we'll have some calendar work to do. We'll have to switch some things out, okay? But today is Tuesday, March 31st. So let's go ahead and write that on the board. Boop, let's get you over. So March 31st. M-A-R-C-H 31st, 2020. March starts with a capital M. Always when we write the month starts with a capital letter. So March 31st, you can also write 3/31/20. So today on all your papers, go ahead and write the date. Just because that is a good habit to get into. We do that while we're at school, especially as you guys get older and get into Miss Freeman's class and Miss Sizemore's class. You'll always have to write the date on everything. So it's a great practice, a great habit to go ahead and get into now. And for today's book, we're going to keep reading a little bit more about bears. Before we were shut down for this quarantine social distancing period, while we were on spring break, I had gone to the library, our Elkin Public Library, and I got several books about bears, some fiction books and some non-fiction books. This book is non-fiction. That means that these are true facts about bears, not made up stories about bears. Now, yesterday we read Bears Lose Tooth. So was that fiction or nonfiction? That was fiction. That was fiction, because that was not a true factual book about bears. That was a made up story about a bear and his friends and him losing a tooth. But today we're going to read a little bit about bears because we're finishing up this week A Bear Named Trouble. This book is awesome. I wish you guys were here to see it. I'll show you just a few of the pictures, and then I'm only going to read a couple of pages to you. But I did want you to see a few of the pictures. This first picture here is a bear skeleton versus a human skeleton. So you can see this is a bear skeleton and this is a human skeleton. So if they were standing upright on their hind legs, you can see how their skeletons are in some ways quite similar to ours and in some ways different. But this is just making a comparison between bear and human skeletons. So I thought that was really neat. Nora, here's your panda bear. Let's see. This shows a black bear versus a grizzly bear. It shows what they look like and also about their paw prints. When we read A Bear Named Trouble, they talked about knowing the difference between the paw prints of the bears and using that to identify them. This shows some great illustrations of the different kinds of bears. Remember, we had this work in our class with the different bear cards, and you had to identify different types of bears. And this shows a map and shows where different bears are located. So it has a different color for each bear, like polar bears, grizzly bears, spectacled bears, panda bears, sloth bears, sun bears, and shows where they're located. Now in our book, A Bear Named Trouble, we're up here in Alaska, so up here where I'm pointing with my finger. This is where A Bear Named Trouble takes place, Alaska. And you can see up there they have grizzly bears and black bears. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about, I want to read this section to you that is called Growing Up and Finding a Home, because this is, you'll see how this relates to A Bear Named Trouble. The most difficult period for any bear is the first year of independence after leaving its mother. And that is right where Trouble is. In the book that we're reading, he is within that first year, just actually first couple of months of leaving his mother. Young bears are less experienced at finding food, and because young bears are relatively small, larger animals may keep them away from the best feeding areas. That is exactly what happened to Trouble. Every time he came across something to eat, another larger bear would scare him away. Sometimes bigger bears even take hard-earned food away from smaller ones. Younger bears also face the challenge of finding and defending their own individual territories. Like most mammals, so there's a vocabulary word for you. We're studying mammals, and bears are mammals. So like most mammals, bears tend to establish themselves within a specific area. And you can think back to what we learned last week about mammals, and you'll know why a bear is a mammal. It has fur, it's warm-blooded, it gives birth to live babies. The moms nurse their cubs on milk. So all these things let us know that bears are mammals. Once settled, a bear will live its entire life within boundaries of its home range, which means an area big enough to provide all the needs that it might have from year to year. These needs include food in the spring, summer, and fall, safe denning sites for the winter sleep, and mates in the breeding season. Finding a place to live may be easier for young females than for males. So females, that means the girl bears, males, the boy bears. So Trouble is a male. So it's saying that finding a place to live is easier for the females than the males, like Trouble. Sometimes black bear mothers make room in their own territories for their daughters to establish themselves as they grow up. Male cubs are not so lucky, and that is exactly what we found out. They usually have to travel to a new area and compete with other bears to establish themselves. So the facts that this nonfiction book is telling us about bears jive with what is happening in our fiction book, A Bear Named Trouble. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what bears eat. Most species of bears will eat almost anything because their teeth are adapted for eating both plants and animals. So what is that called if an animal eats plants and animals? We're going to do lessons with that this week. So think about that. They grind up plant material using large flat surfaces of their cheek teeth or their molars. Their cheek teeth are the teeth back here in their cheeks. With their big, sharp canine teeth, they kill other animals and tear them apart. So these are your canine teeth are here, the big, sharp teeth. They use those to kill and rip the meat apart. They also eat the remains of animals that are already dead. Animals such as wolves that hunt and kill other animals are called carnivores. The term comes from two Latin words, carne, meaning flesh, and vor, meaning eater. So I'm going to write that on the board for you. So carne means flesh. This is your flesh, the meat on your bones, the meat on the animal's bones, that's their flesh. And vor means eat. So a carnivore is a flesh eater or a meat eater. The term comes from two Latin words, carne meaning flesh and vor meaning eater. Animals such as deer that eat only plants are herbivores. Omnivores eat both plants and animals. So omni, meaning kind of all or everything. Omni means they eat both plants and animals. Omnivore. Herbivore, that means they eat only plants. Black bears and grizzly bears are omnivores, and and the variety of food they eat is astounding. In the spring, when they first come out of their dens, they eat grasses, berries left over from the previous fall, and soft roots and stems of fleshy plants, the bark of young trees, and fresh leaves. But if they're omnivores, they're going to eat more than just these roots and stems and plants and berries, right? In the summer, black bears and grizzlies supplement their diet with tiny animals, such as insects, individual beetles, ants, and termites are small food items for such big animals, but bears can eat large numbers of them at ant hills or beehives. The larvae of ants and bees are also a nutritious delicacy, and of course, black bears are famous for liking honey, whether it comes from the honey tree of wild bees or from a farmer's beehive. Toward autumn, when the black bears and grizzlies are fattening up for the winter's sleep, they seek out such things as berries and nuts. These are rich foods and often abundant in small areas. The bears can feed intensely and get quite fat in only a few weeks. Black bears and grizzlies also hunt and kill other animals. On the coast of Alaska, which is where we are in A Bear Named Trouble, on the coast of Alaska and British Columbia, grizzly bears feed on salmon that migrate into the rivers to spawn. So salmon, that's fish. You guys might like to eat salmon. I know Eli loves salmon. At McNeil Falls in Alaska, people come to watch from a close but safe area large numbers of these bears fishing. Grizzlies use their strength and large claws to dig marmots and other ground squirrels out of the underground burrows. Both kinds of bears are skillful predators of deer, fawns, and calves of elk, moose, and caribou. So do you remember in A Bear Named Trouble, that's what he was after. He was after the baby moose that was already dead. He didn't kill the moose, but he had come across a baby moose that was dead already, and he was so hungry and he was going to eat that. But that's when the mother moose, who was still grieving, kicked him in the jaw. Grizzlies, which are larger, sometimes kill adult moose, elk, caribou, and musk oxen as well. And then it goes on to talk about other bears, such as panda bears, that eat mostly bamboo, and it says they can eat 40 pounds of bamboo every day. More than 90% of their diet consists of bamboo stems and leaves. So that's what panda bears eat. Okay, so that's showing us that the book that we're reading is very realistic, because so much of what we just read in here goes right along with what we know is going on with Trouble. So we're going to finish A Bear Named Trouble this week. And tomorrow, when we have our circle time, we're going to start a good book about Abraham Lincoln, because we're going to start learning about the Civil War. So I'll talk to you guys later, and I will see you again around the circle table tomorrow morning.